All right, everyone, I will call this meeting to order and begin by acknowledging with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. These people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Nicolet, Bowen Island. Before we begin the formal part of our meeting, the first thing I'd like to do is call Jason Zahara from the Bowen Island Legion for a presentation here today.
Thank you. As required by Dominion Command, the traditional first poppy goes to the mayor from the Legion, and then the rest of the community can receive poppies. Okay. Here one.
Thank you. The person most used to handing some pins.
There we go.
Thank you, Jason.
And I'd just like to say a note of gratitude and thank you to the support that the council has given the Legion over the years. Very, very much appreciated.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the council, I would like to recognize the support that the Legion has provided to the community over the years, both socially and in its contributions to the community and the social fabric of the island has been a tremendous thing to be a part of since I became a member of the community here. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you very much. And thank you all.
Okay. And as we begin the formal part of our meeting, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of Monday, October 28th, 2024. And thank you for joining either in person or online. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. As we always do, I would like to introduce the other elected members of Bowen Island's Council joining us both in person and online today. Starting on my lonesome left here, we have Councillor Alison Morse. To my far right, we have Councillor and Islands Trustee Sue Ellen Fast. For that is Councillor and Islands Trustee Judy Getty. And then joining us online here is Councillor John Saunders, as well as Councillor Alex Jurgensen. And I understand that Councillor Tim Wake is going to be joining us a little later. I'd also like to introduce members of our professional staff team who are here this afternoon and who will be present and presenting reports, including our Chief Administrative Officer, Kieran Dillon, our Corporate Officer, Sophie Insignia, as well as other members of our staff who you will be meeting throughout the agenda. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the question and answer period and public comments section of the meeting, your presence and voice will be included in the permanent recording, which is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca, as well as live streaming to our top 10 YouTube channel to billions around the world right now, where it'll be kept in posterity. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of the business of local government. We all love our community. We are all passionate about what happens here. I would encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting and to direct your comments during the public comment section in the question and answer period to myself. For those that are following along here in the room or online, the full council package, including all reports for this afternoon's meeting, is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. And turning to our agenda here, I will look to the corporate officer for the introduction of any late items this afternoon.
Yes, there's item 4.7, which is minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held October 21st. And then item 4.3, which is currently in the consent agenda. Staff recommend this be moved to item 7.2. The recommendation has been revised and it's on this on table 8 that you have in front of you. And the report has been revised as well, just given the news on Friday regarding the Bowen Island Conservancy. Yeah.
So late items and then a change of 4.3 to 7.2. That's the gist of it. Okay. And with that, I will look to council for a. I have one item. I would like Item 12.6 in correspondence, Islands Trust request for provincial review of Islands Trust mandate dated October 16th, 2024. Move to,
Correspondent.
no, I'd like it as part of the discussion in 8.1, so I'd like to move it to 8.1A. And with that, I will look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Rolling back up here, public comments. I believe we just have one public comment today.
Yes, that's right. It's Neris Pool.
Ms. Poole, if you'd like to join us up here at the front. If you are very familiar with the public comments process, but you have 3 minutes to make your comments, and the timer starts whenever you're comfortable.
Okay, hope I don't go over my 3 minutes. Good afternoon. Thank you to Mayor and Council for this opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of the Bowen Island Conservancy Board. Owen Plowman, our president, is actually on a plane in transit at the moment, so was unable to join us. But I do have 2 more directors of our board who are here with me. They're Joyce Ganong and John Rich. And I just want to speak a little about our land acquisition that I think everybody is aware of. Needless to say, and it's probably an understatement to say we are absolutely thrilled to have this opportunity to take care of these lands at Cape Roger Curtis. And I want to emphasize that this has happened as a result of our whole island community pulling together. Their thanks are due to many that basically reached this amazing result. First, there's all the Bowen Islanders who basically let their views be known to council when the Metro Vancouver Parks proposal for a campground came through. And next, there's the council. Thank you for listening to the public and for acting on those views that you listen to. And then certainly not the least, but probably one of the most important is the amazing generosity of donors on this island who believe conservation and protection is so important. Without them, for sure this would not have happened. Finally, the Conservancy Board for helping complete the deal and allowing us to purchase these lands. These lands at the Cape are for the enjoyment of all, not just islanders, but those who want to visit Bowen and experience the beauty of nature by walking through these lands. We ask all who come to these lands to respect the signs about staying on trails, etc. The Conservancy will be removing shortly the no public access sign that Metro Vancouver Parks put up at each lot. And we'll be replacing them with just a use at your own risk sign. And that's kind of our first step that with respect to these lands. It will take time, as we are a totally volunteer organization, to figure out the way forward with respect to these lands. And we ask the public to please be patient as we figure this out. We have an annual general meeting on November 9th at Collins Hall at 1 o'clock. And we invite everyone who wants to attend to come. New members are always welcome. Donations are always welcome too. Finally, with respect to the permissive tax exemption for these lands, I want to thank Council for considering our application. Any savings the Conservancy may have as a result of you granting this permissive tax exemption will go to the benefit of the public. The Conservancy intends to spend any savings on the maintenance and upkeep of the lands. That concludes my comments. So thank you again for being supportive and for basically being a partner in our work for protection of Bowen Island.
Thank you, Ms. Poole. And I see a question here from Councillor Saunders.
Thanks. Not a question. I think I'm speaking for more than myself, but I'll just speak for myself. Thank you so much for the work you and your group put in on this. I've heard nothing but positive response since the word came out, and I think we all owe you a debt of gratitude for everything you've done here. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
And just, I had the opportunity to congratulate the Conservancy online and through social media, but here in person with representatives here and sitting in this chair, I'd just like to formally extend my congratulations to the Bowen Island Conservancy for its acquisition. We're committed to both public use and preservation and stewardship of those lands. I know that all of us around this table really look forward to what's going to come out of it. And similar to Councillor Saunders, I've heard nothing but positive things, and congratulations both to the Conservancy. Thank you to your donors, and anything that we can do moving forward, we would be more than happy to hear from the Conservancy about. So thank you.
Thank you for that, and you will be hearing from me.
The challenge is of being left-handed is everything gets reversed. Copy on the wrong side. Okay, moving on to delegations. We have none. Consent agenda. I will look to councillors for any items that they would like to pull from the consent agenda. Councillor Getty.
4.5.
Looking around the table for items to be pulled from the consent agenda. Seeing none, I will look for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Getty. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Moving down to 4.5, amendment of urban systems contract to include additional services during construction of waterworks and culverts. Work from our Director of Engineering, and over to you for disposition, Councillor Getty.
So I wanted, I'm confident that you're the mayor's task force on infrastructure and our new CAO are very much in keeping a watch over these sorts of contracts. And so I'm not, and there's another comment in the financial implications that the fees, these additional fees can be accommodated within the assumed overall consultant costs that were included in the project budget. But this is the second or third adjustment to this contract, and I am concerned about project creep. So I'm sure that there's others in the community that are keeping track as well. So I simply wanted to make those comments that I've trust in what everybody is that is looking at this more closely than I am are doing, but it's a problem. So I will then move this recommendation 4.6. Sorry, 4.5 for as recommended.
Okay, so it's been moved as recommended by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast, and perhaps I'll just look to staff if there's any comments they would like to make.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. Through the mayor, so back to Councillor Getty's comment is that we put this in consent agenda because they're operating within the council approved budget, but the expectation is that to ensure that contingency is kept on this project overall. So I understand there's still a contingency here, and we don't anticipate any more changes to urban systems contract. This is to account for a longer than anticipated timeline for construction, and also some of the feedback we got from other people who had worked with MB in the past on the level of oversight they require. One of those references happened to be me when I was in Sea Shelton, worked with them. So pretty confident with this number at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Fast.
Thanks. I was happy to second the motion. I think it's the project budget doesn't need to be amended. It's got staff involvement, which I think is really good for the overall knowing the systems as they're installed and for efficiencies. And it's critical work. It needs to be done. And I kind of like the step-by-step process where council can
stay informed as these big critical projects happen. And I know after the atmospheric river last week, that I wouldn't be surprised if there were more changes, and in which case, bring it on. Thank you.
Councillor Fast. Seeing no further comments or debates, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
I,
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Moving along to section 6.1, ratification of recommendations from the Committee of the Whole meeting held October 21st, 2024. I look to council for someone to move the recommendation. Councilor Getty.
I'll move both recommendations as outlined in the agenda.
I would ask that be separate.
Okay, let's get them seconded first, and then we can some of them. Seconded by Councillor Fast, and then we will look at them separately. So the first recommendation, the council refer the Housing Advisory Committee's Community-Owned Housing Organization Report to staff for further review for financial and resource allocation review, and to report back for the 2025 strategic planning session. Comments or debate on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
I,
That carries unanimously. And the second recommendation, which reads, in preparation for the work that staff will undertake in order to report back to council, that council approve in principle entering into a partnering agreement with Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing, Birch, a nonprofit housing society, with the help of legal counsel, and that council approve expenditure for legal fees and other possible costs for the above up to a maximum of $5,000. Discussion or debate on this item. Councilor Morse.
I think this is putting the cart before the horse in a way, and also we've no idea what the content of the partnering agreement will be, and we haven't decided that we necessarily want a housing organization. We haven't looked at using existing organizations or carrying on with Lookout in the future. So I'm not in favor of this at this time.
Thank you, Councilor Morse. Councilor Fast.
I am in favor of this motion. I think we all, well, I've heard a lot over the past, well, since the previous OCP update process in 2010, 2011, that affordable housing was a dominant community theme at the time, along with green oasis kind of nature theme. And that's a long time. I think we all know that it's urgent. I don't want to slow it down. It's approval in principle. And I think we should move ahead with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fast. Councilor Jurgensen, looking for first-time speakers, Councilor Morse.
I second what Councillor Fast said, this has been a big community need, and the municipality can't do this alone. Partnering with a community organization is really a logical next step, and who better than an organization from Bowen itself, who understands our community needs deeply and has put in a lot of work in this space. So I just wanted to speak to the fact that I'm in favor as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jurgensen. Councilor Getty.
so the second recommendation was in part in support of the first. And so this is to give staff some legal interpretation in terms of the pros and cons of any kind of a partnering agreement, and whether or not there's any other organization in the community that could be a housing authority. And rather than have that as an additional staff component, and to basically help with the review, the staff has been asked to take and report back in terms of financial and resource allocation. So I'm in favor of this. It's up to $5,000, and to look at the pros and cons of with the help of legal counsel, so that it's not entirely on staff in terms of coming up with all the details we want in that report.
Thank you, Councilor Getty. I believe Councilor Morse to respond.
I just wanted to clarify that my opposition is in no way reflective of my lack of, I'm totally in support of our need for and getting affordable housing built. But I don't think we looked at all the options, and this says, and in principle, entering into a partnering agreement with a specific organization. If the resolution said that council approve further research into what type of housing organization we would want if we need one, then, and then I would be okay. And lot 3 is going ahead because of a grant that Lookout applied for and Lookout has received. That grant was not given to Birch.
Thank you,
And
Councillor.
Lookout will be building and managing the project on lot 3. Why not continue with them for other projects?
Councillor Morris. Seeing no further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries with Councillor Morris in opposition. Moving on to section 7.1 bylaws, 7.1 parking standards for affordable housing, multifamily developments. We have our manager of planning, Daniel Martin, here with us today.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a short presentation. I'll just put that on the screen. So I'm here with a project about reviewing affordable housing and parking standards. So this project came about, it's in our approved action plan for our Housing Accelerator Fund from the CMHC government. So one of the action plan items is to review existing parking standards in the land use bylaw with a view to reducing parking requirements for housing multifamily developments. So you'll see in your report, we did an overview partly looking at sort of the rationale and driver for this is a large part because of the cost of providing housing, both in hard costs such as build and develop the housing, and then land costs and opportunity in terms of space taken up with providing housing. The report then looks at what are our parking standards currently in our land use bylaw. So they range from our rural zones require 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, and settlement zones, which is sort of our more denser development, 1 per dwelling unit, and then CD zones vary a bit. So we go down to as far as one of our CD zones allows 0.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. We have 2 over the years given a number of variances for parking, primarily in Snug Cove and for projects that have an element of affordable housing or rental housing within them. So we see area 1 of lot 2 receive a parking variance to reduce the required parking to 8 spaces for the development, so about 0.29 spaces per unit. And then the Birch or now Lookout development on Miller Road has a variance that would make it provide about 0.41 spaces per unit. So what the bylaw that is before you proposes and what staff recommend is setting a standard at 0.5 spaces per dwelling. So the same as we have in one existing CD zone. And then include a definition for affordable housing. So non-market residential dwelling units that may only be owned or rented under the terms of housing covenants registered on title in favor of the Bowen Island municipality. And that definition is taken from our OCP and our affordable housing policy. Something to note in this is this would apply strictly to those units in a development that are affordable. So when you look at, for example, the area 1 of lot 2 development by Bowen Island Trunk Road, whole building is rental, but only a small subset of those units would be affordable in this. So just timeline for council where we are. The action item is identified in our Housing Accelerator Fund. This is the bylaw presented for first reading. We are here. I'll say too for council that the receiving first reading for a bylaw was a milestone in our Housing Accelerator Fund. Why we're coming for first reading off the bat is to try to demonstrate for CMHC progress being made on our housing action plan. We're recommending referral to the Islands Trust and the APC and the Housing Advisory Committee before coming back for second and third reading and any consideration of bylaw adoption. So the recommendation is the bylaw be read a first time, be referred to the Islands Trust along with the policy statement checklist, and be referred to the APC and the Housing Advisory Committee.
To council for questions, Councillor Fast.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm wondering, would it be a benefit to also refer this to the Transportation Advisory Committee regarding parking and numbers of cars on the internet?
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe I first heard about a multifamily rental affordable housing project in North Van City in 2021 that was permitted with they approved the first building with no parking at all. And that I learned of through a climate lens. So if you think it would, could you let me know, would it be beneficial to get the Environment Climate Action Committee's input on this?
Yeah, I mean, I could see it from that point of view as well.
Okay. Then I'd like to, I'll propose that those get added when we make the motion.
Okay, I'll come back to you for the motion recommendation.
Thank you.
From my chair here, I love that this is coming through. I like seeing movement towards our goals and objectives based on the Housing Accelerator funding. I'm curious though, the elephant in the room is that, put it plainly, parking in the Cove right now is a bit of a nightmare. I just put it charitably, particularly in the peak season. And we've seen some developments so far that have had relaxed parking restrictions. And I do wonder whether that's exacerbated the situation, particularly as the Cove becomes more dense. We don't have any municipally owned lots down there. Some of the lots that we did have disappeared. So I'm curious from the standpoint of Snug Cove, I mean, this is great outside the Cove. I mean, there's not a ton of density once we leave the Cove. But how does this fit in with an overall planning strategy for parking in the Cove more broadly?
I mean, I think I challenge, you know, that was some of our review. We knew we had committed, this was a commitment for our grant funding that we committed to CMHC to review. And that was some of the rationale of having a parking standard level that is the same as some of like one of our existing zones that is in fact higher than we've granted through variances. So thinking, okay, what's an acceptable level, and knowing that this would apply just to those affordable housing units. So what's a blanket level that we'd say for affordable housing, this is a good standard that we're comfortable across the board. But then to go beyond that would still require the variance. And yeah, I mean, every time people bring up parking in the Cove, like it's a challenge. Like we've seen development of many of the sort of longer term commuter lots, which has benefited, right? I think everyone would rather have a health center than a parking lot, right? So on the balance, you go, yes, you understand each of the choices why those happened. But it's a challenge, and the challenge looking at what land remains for the municipality to provide parking in the Cove. It is a challenge.
Okay. And so, you know, just from the standpoint of council and planning and where we're moving in the future, I mean, what are the steps that we need to take in addition to knowing that we need to provide some affordable housing, but what are the next steps to get a more comprehensive parking plan for the municipality, particularly in our densest area?
Yeah, I mean, I know in our strategic plan, we have a consideration to pay parking in Snug Cove. I mean, that's maybe a conversation that would need to happen. Like that, I think UQLIT recently did some work in that with same challenges, like small downtown area with no available street parking and no available land. And it's like at some point, it's like, well, what's the demand for free parking in Snug Cove versus what's the demand for paid parking in Snug Cove? They're different.
Okay. And then in our definition of affordable housing, I believe in the report, if I recall correctly, that we're using a definition of affordable housing that says it's non-market housing, and that gets enshrined in a covenant on the title. What is our definition of non-market housing? Is it $1 below the market rates, or does it have to be a significant portion below the market rates? And what are we defining? You know, what is our benchmark to the market?
We have taken different standards for different housing agreements. So like one example that we've used is we've used CMHC publishes market rental rates, and they publish them not for Bowen specific because we're too small a market for them to track. And so they publish it for the Metro Vancouver region, and we've taken the 10% below the market region rent as an affordable housing rent. And some of the projects use that for the definition, whereas other ones use BC Housing publishes what's called HILLS, or housing income levels. And again, looking at the metro region, because there isn't a Bowen specific one, and that looks at essentially income levels, and then it defines the rent based on 30% of that income level, and they have income levels that different for like a bachelor versus a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom. So we've used those two metrics, trying to look at things that are defined by something that we're not establishing and tracking, but it's like something that is put out by some agency.
Okay. And so and then because this is done by covenant, just from a process perspective, is it then possible on a site by site? So let's say we have a developer that would like to build a significant 30 units of non-market housing in the Cove. On a site by site basis, then is it possible to determine what exact non-market is and then weigh the cost of waiving parking requirements versus the actual benefit that's going to be inherited by the community?
Yes, so essentially the housing covenant ends up being what's called a housing agreement, which is adopted by bylaw.
Okay.
So council would have, so each of the projects we have that have a housing agreement, council's adopted a bylaw that enshrines those details.
Okay.
So we will be bringing one up, like for the Lookout site, we have agreement to lease, the lease will discuss that there will be a housing agreement that accompanies that. So you will be seeing that one, probably the most recent ones.
Okay, so then by if this was to pass, we're just at first reading and we'll go to various committees. But if it were to pass as is, we're not necessarily tying our hands to reduced parking. Period.
Correct. If somebody came and said, oh, I'm affordable housing because it's going to be $1 or less per month than I could otherwise get, whatever that is. There's council has the ability to say that's not, so that's not affordable housing. That's not actually providing anything.
Okay, great. As long as we have that site specific flexibility. Councillor Fast, I believe you've spoken already on this. Okay, I'm going to go to
Just to ask a couple of questions.
a couple of questions. Okay. I only asked because Councillor Getty had her hand up, so I'm going to go to Councillor Getty and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Fast.
I'm gonna pass you, ask the question about the covenant.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fast.
Sure, just to say that I'm in favor of this. I like the idea. I would actually be in favor of it if it was lower. And that's because in the report I read the cost can be 10% of construction cost just for parking, and up to 30% or 33% I saw in the report. That doesn't help a project be affordable. And I saw, and I'm looking at all the different things in there. There was I agreed with most of it, including the Islands Trust 5.2.5. I think now that we have e-bikes are being taken up by the community and they're a game changer in terms of people getting around. I'd be interested to know how many people who were living in affordable housing would actually keep a car if they didn't need it for work. And if they needed it for work, would they have it away from there in the daytime? So I wonder about maybe the impacts on parking in the Cove might not be as much, because Bowen has also got options such as working from home. Now we have high-speed internet, and so much of work can happen over Zoom and these other things. A car co-op, I'm a member of a car co-op. There's 2 cars currently down behind Trolls in Horseshoe Bay. I have used co-op cars that's Moto. In Nanaimo, there's one associated with, I had to hike over there to find it and hold my little e-fob onto it to get the blocks to pop up, throw it away. So that they can be used by everybody in the community as well. Car co-ops would be an option with the new development. We have the multi-use pathway that we're investing in, transit, other options that we haven't looked at very much, like Bowen Lift. And I think there's lots of options in the future that would help keep the project affordable. And I'm not convinced that every unit in a affordable housing project needs a parking spot to park the car in, particularly during the day. And so anyway, for climate reasons as well, I think in terms of all the other work we're doing, I think I would sooner it was lower, but I like the point about any project could ask for a variance to lower it, as Snug Cove House did when the costs of building that underground parking were looking too high. So I'm in favor, and I'd like to move the motion.
Mayor Leonard,
Yes.
Councillor Wake just arrived on Zoom just about 2 minutes ago.
Oh,
Right on Zoom.
hello, Councillor Wade.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm in a really noisy place, an airport, so I'm just going to stand by and I'll raise my hand if I want to speak.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Over to you for the motion, Councillor Fest.
Okay, I move that bylaw number 670-2024, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57-2002, amendment bylaw number 670-2024 be read a first time. That bylaw number 670-2024 and the Islands Trust Policy Statement be referred to Islands Trusts and the Islands Trust Policy Statement checklist, Directive Policies Checklist be referred to the Islands Trust, and that bylaw number 670-2024 be referred to the Advisory Planning Commission, Housing Advisory Committee, Transportation Advisory Committee, and Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee.
Moved by Councillor Fest, seconded by Councillor Getty. Any discussion? Councillor Getty.
This is important for the Housing Accelerator Fund, so I'm not opposed to it and will be voting in favor, but big but, the premise is that if we're reducing parking and we've got a problem in Snow Cove, then we also need to look at and work on alternative transportation plans. So that is a big problem, especially in terms of TransLink and their issues and the coverage that we've got on Bowen in terms of bus service and trying to figure out ways of increasing that or improving it. So I was also surprised when I looked at that paragraph about the cost of providing parking, that it's between 10 and 33% of increased cost per stall, and it's between $20,000 and $45,000 per stall plus maintenance costs. And I think of all of the parking that is needed in the Cove, and if that's even a rough ballpark in terms of what we're looking at in terms of providing more parking, then that's a massive expense, and we need to refer to our strategic planning in terms of working harder on those alternatives instead of increasing parking lots in and around Snow Cove. So when I look at the chart that is included in this report under number 6, and the projects that are in and around Snow Cove, we've got I think it's a land use bylaw that requires a total of 66 parking, required parking stalls, but we've reduced that already to 32. So that's less than half of what normally would be required according to our zoning. So whether or not that has a measurable impact on the parking in Snow Cove is debatable. It's going to be hard to get that information in terms of research. But if you think of all the residents that were going into a place, plus employees that might be hired to look after the residents, the building, plus any visitors, plus any tradespeople, you can see how looking at it from the angle of reducing expenses, it makes total sense. But if you're looking at the actual use of the building and the potential for parking, we're creating more of a problem for the area. And I think that it's our responsibility to be stronger in terms of strategic planning for alternate forms, not just e-bikes and multi-use paths that are so expensive and all the rest of it. They're great ideas, but we need to figure out ways of getting fewer cars out of Snow Cove, if at all possible, and more bums in seats on buses. So that'll be my new slogan. Anyway, I'm voting in favor because I think the Housing Accelerator Fund is really, really important. And we don't want to miss out on any part of that 1 point, however many million. So 1.6 million. So that's a really interesting carrot that's been dangled in front of us, and I wouldn't want to lose that opportunity. But I think we also have to figure out how to deal with a very significant problem in the Cove.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. And seeing no further discussion, I'll throw my 2 cents in here as well. I would concur wholeheartedly with some of the comments of Councillor Getty. I believe that we are coming up to the halfway mark of this term. And that in the next 2 years, we have a strong ability to actually deliver on the ground results to residents, and parking and public works projects is right up the alley of this. I am going to vote in favor. I would strongly encourage both staff as well as council liaisons on the various committees to surface the question of parking in a wider, in a wider sense, particularly in the Cove on these committees. I think the APC, the HAC, and BIMTAC are particularly suited to those conversations, and Environment and Climate Action, should they wish to weigh in on it as well. But it's, time to sort this out, because if we don't, there is going to be the continual and increasing clamor from residents to have some sort of solution implemented in Snug Cove. With that, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Raise your hand, say nay. And that carries.
I in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Jorgensen, and that carries unanimously. Moving on to section 8.1.
7.2.
7.2, that's right, we have that moved. Which is the permissive tax exemption bylaw number 669, 2024, with our CFO, Kristen Watson, joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Through the Mayor to the rest of Council. I'm bringing this very late report to your attention to provide Council with the opportunity, if so choose, to amend the permissive tax exemption bylaw that is already been given 3 readings through the bylaw adoption process. We had a very significant development late on Friday. I think most people now know that 16 lots have transferred ownership from Metro Vancouver to the Conservancy. Upon hearing that news on Friday, I confirmed what the actual date of transfer for these lots were going to be. October 31st is a very significant date for ownership for the exemption status of these properties. So were they to be owned by Metro Vancouver on October 31st, they would remain exempt for the rest of the year. The transfer was confirmed that it's taking place on October 25th. So that meant there were significant property tax implications for the Conservancy that would arise for next year. So I provided a report to Council. I am recommending that the 16 lots be added to the permissive tax exemption bylaw. This would mean it's a substantive change. It's actually almost doubling the permissive tax exemption recommendation by adding a further $92,000 of property tax exemption for the year. There is some caveat in that. I do believe that once the transfer has taken place and the properties are reassessed by BC Assessment, there are covenants now placed on those properties, which limit their value from a property development perspective. So these properties are all valued at the residential rate. It's probably like the highest market value on the island. But once they're reassessed with those covenants in place, and that no development may take place on these lands, it will significantly reduce the value of these lots. So the actual value of the property tax exemption, once we look at it in that light, will likely be significantly lower. The other piece in this is that were the lots to remain under Metro Vancouver ownership, they would be exempt anyways. So we're not asking Council to make a significant change from what the original status of these lots were. So the average cost under this estimate, again, this is just an estimate based on this very high market value. The average cost for the addition of these properties adds an additional $41 on average to the average householder's bill. But again, these are very high level estimates made very early in the game. And when the new role is presented to us next year, it's going to look very different.
I don't think I have any further things to inform council about, but the recommendation is that the bylaw would be sent back for first reading. The amended bylaw would be sent back for first reading. And in order to adopt it by the statutory deadline of October 31st, council will have to hold a special council meeting on Thursday, October 31st, in order to adopt this bylaw in time.
Thank you to the CFO. I see a hand up. Over to you, Councillor Jurgensen.
All right, thank you. Through the chair, I just want to confirm for the public that were these lots to remain with Metro Vancouver, these properties would be exempt, therefore the cost of $41 that is shifted to other tax, the rest of the tax roll would have happened anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Were they to remain under Metro Vancouver ownership, you just wouldn't be able to measure it because it would be jumbled in among the other types of changes annually that occur to the tax roll. So there's things like non-market change, ownership changes. Those sorts of things are kind of lumped together and you're not able to easily measure it. Now that council is potentially exempting these properties using this alternative process, they pull it out of the tax roll and you're able to see it and you're able to specifically measure it.
Councillor Getty, followed by Councillor Fast.
So there's a paragraph in the report in terms of the cap of what's available for property tax exemptions. So, and this is 140% of the 123,000. So, what's the problem if we're over by?
It's a policy. Council can choose to set aside their policy. Again, using these property values, we believe that the cost is artificially high at this point in the game when we get the final roll and we get an adjusted value for those properties. There's a very good chance, in all likelihood, that they will fall in value and will be able to fit in under that 1.5% cap that's been established by policy. But again, it's a council policy as opposed to a bylaw. So as a one-time event on kind of an emergency basis, council can go outside of its policy. It is important that that just be stated publicly and that, you know, that this is a decision that was made.
All right, so if that's not spelled out specifically in this recommendation, but that's in fact what we're doing.
It's in the report.
Making a one-time exemption to a policy.
Correct.
Councillor Fast.
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion. I'm with full congratulations to the Conservancy and everybody in the community and to donors and everybody who's assisted in other organizations too. Whereas, and for all the reasons that are in the reports. Whereas council wishes to amend the draft 2025-2027 permissive tax exemption bylaw number 669, 2024 by including 16 lots at Cape Roger Curtis recently acquired by the Bowen Island Conservancy from Metro Vancouver. Therefore, be it resolved that amended bylaw number 669, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Permissive Tax Exemption Bylaw 2025-2027, number 669, 2024, be reread a first, second, and third time. Second.
Any further discussion? Just like to present some appreciation based on the public comment that we heard earlier from the representative from the Conservancy that it sounds like in day 4 of the new ownership, public use is far more open than in many months of the previous ownership. So I believe that there is a public good here and I'm in full support of this recommendation. With that, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, raise your hand, say nay. And that carries unanimously. Thank you.
You want this one? Good friend of resolve.
This was that.
Okay, moving on to 8.1 Islands Trust Policy Statement Amendment Project Engagement Options. We have our manager and planning and development joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have here a report to bring to council, report we received from the Islands Trust about their Islands Trust policy statement process. So the Islands Trust, looking ahead to engagement on a revised trust policy statement, has sent to Bowen Island and to all the local trust committees essentially a suite of on-island engagement options, and they are seeking input from the municipality in terms of what level of on-island engagement we would like to request for their process. So staff reviewed, and we recommended that we would indicate that we would select the engagement option number 5, which is a staff-led, so Islands Trust staff-led community information meeting, and number 6, Islands Trust staff-run info booth for the community engagement about the new draft Islands Trust policy statement. We rejected, or would recommend rejecting some of the options, like the no formal on-island engagement or town hall during a regular meeting. We felt like this was something that would stand alone outside of a council meeting, and that having Islands Trust staff there to present and answer questions was a key part of the engagement.
I will look to council for questions or comments. Councilor Morrison.
I was just curious as to, I think we should add Islands Trust in front of staff-led in the resolution, just for clarity for people reading it. And I was curious as to why the mayor moved 12.6 here.
Yep, I can answer that. I have an alternate.
Whether it is relevant to the resolution.
It is. I'll be moving an alternate resolution. Councilor Fast.
Thank you. As a Islands Trust trustee who was involved in the past term, and maybe even the term before, I can speak to the last time we had engagement about the trust policy statement on Bowen Island. There was a lot of work went into it by both sets of staff down on the boardwalk, and there was not a lot of interest from the community. And they've had several times before that had opportunity to provide feedback, and I was actually having to fish people that I knew off the boardwalk in order to ask them for their input. Daniel was there too. I don't know that this will be that effective for Bowen Island. And also I wanted to bring up the point that I made at the Trust Council is when does this Bowen Island Council get to be involved? The previous council submitted input on the trust policy statement back in 2021. And since then, there's been more work done on it. And I kind of think it would be like the water committees. Maybe it would be better for community consultation to come through Bowen Island Council and then go to the Islands Trust, or as well as, because I gather they'll have a survey too, and or they're proposing survey region-wide through all the local trust areas and that people could participate in. So seeing as how this is like the 4th round of engagement, I'm not sure it's worth the time to do staff-led community information meeting and staff-run info booth, where presumably both sets of staff would be present with, I anticipate, little public input from Bowen Islanders. I'm not sure that's the best use of our time, so I'm open to other ideas about this.
Yes, Councilor Morris.
I was wondering if we could be very specific as to the location. It seems to me having a booth on the ferry during the afternoon commuter runs is the most effective way to get contact with people, and I think that was fairly effective when they did it the last time, because you've got a captive audience.
Councilor Moore said it's one of their options on the list. I think it's number 7 on there.
Yeah. So I was wondering why we picked 6 versus 7.
Through the mayor, we were looking at, or I was looking at the time of the engagement, so they were saying over the summer and thinking that, in essence, thinking of a bow fest booth would be the key time to gather.
Okay. So I think we need to be specific in the recommendation that they come and do a BowFest booth, because doing a booth where they did it the last time, you're not gonna pick up a lot of community people, except if they're running to get a ferry or get off the ferry and head home. So I could totally understand why they didn't have anybody there. I mean, setting up over the library side would have been better. So, yeah, so if you're recommending something like BowFest, and I think maybe we need to be specific in the recommendation. And would the information meeting be, I apologize if it's in here, but available by Zoom and in person? So they should do it here?
I don't know, they'd speak in the report, they would be doing an online workshop open across the trust area. And then this would be a specific in-person information meeting on Bowen.
Okay. It would be nice if they did a hybrid and in person. We'll be in the new facility by then, and then people can also Zoom in or watch on the YouTube channel.
I want to make a couple of comments before we go too far down the road, and then I'll go over to Councillor Getty. Just as to one of the reasons in the correspondence here. Yeah, I find it bewildering that the Islands Trust has sent us a letter and addressed it to the province, formally requesting a review of the Islands Trust, which in the preamble of that letter says the Trust Council has reached the conclusion that, quote, without systemic change, the Islands Trust cannot meet the challenges of its time. While at the same time is looking to spend upwards of $20,000 on engagement on the island. And I guess my first question is does that $20,000 come out of the Bowen Island requisition, or does it come out of the trust funds generally?
It would be out of Trust Council funds, which we pay a share of.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And so, you know, just to go into this letter a little bit, what the Islands Trust, what Trust Council has requested the province is a full-on review of the government's model of the trust. It's requested a review on the object and mandate of the trust, decision-making structures with respect to DRIPA, the geographic scope and the marine authority of the trust, as well as funding mechanisms. And again, given that it said that it can't meet its own objective and that it wants the province to decide it's engaging in policy statement engagement within local trust councils, seems to me a little strange. And in addition, we have a trust council that's formulated, to my knowledge, no public strategic plan for the 2022 to 2026 term. And, you know, with this letter, and even within the spirit of our protocol agreement, as a municipality and as a council and as staff within the municipality, we're not being engaged in any meaningful way on these governance changes, on these changes to scope of authority, or even as a council first with Islands Trust policy statement. So, you know, the recommendation that I'm prepared to move is that Bowen Island, you know, until these things are resolved, until the Islands Trust Council can put together a meaningful strategic plan and agree that it's got some things that it would like to do and see this term, until it engages Bowen Island meaningful and respectfully on all the changes of governance that it would like to take. And, you know, perhaps have some meaningful conversation as to what the systemic change is needed that the Islands Trust can't meet, and Bowen Island's responsibility in that. To me, it seems like an utter waste of $20,000 to do engagement on the Islands Trust policy statement, when everything else that surrounds that statement seems to be up in the air. So it seems to me to be a bit of a futile exercise. You know, I would just prefer to say, you know, we don't support this engagement at this time, given all these previous issues that I've just mentioned, and see where they would like to engage with us from there. So those would be my comments. And I'll go to Councillor Getty, followed by Councillor Saunders.
It's a very interesting comment in terms of process of all the different parts, moving pieces that are going on at the trust. So, it's, so Trust Council has had a vote to send that letter to the province, and it was a 10-14 vote. But the majority, I'm now in the position of a member of the Trust Council of supporting that majority decision. But it wasn't without a number of the comments that the mayor has raised as part of the debate. This is, there's a section of the staff and the trust who have been working so hard on this and doing incredibly good work. And this is what we have in front of us now is the product of that part of the staff with the support of the whole of the Trust Council. So this has been going on for many, many years, and it's good work that they've done in terms of involving First Nations and getting a lot of good feedback from some of the nations, and working hard in terms of figuring out ways of developing co-governance or some form of collaboration with people that have First Nations people that have strong interest in the land base. And then on the other hand, you have this ongoing rumbling of there's some islands that have some very intense problems. And I was reading a quote this week from Anais Nin in terms of the way that you see something depends on where you're looking, your position that you're looking from. And I think that all of the debate around that letter to the province is in part dependent on what your position is in what is happening in your community. And yes, they're two completely different messages. And in terms of, there was a comment at the last trust meeting that there was a hope that, and there was some mention that you, as Mayor of Bowen, might have been able to show up as a delegation. And that didn't happen for whatever reason. But I think it's really important that we formulate our response as a council, and my being a member of this council in terms of clarifying and helping the Trust Council to understand the importance of our protocol agreement and what that means. You know, the first blush of the trust budget is shocking. And I don't want to get into it now because I think that it's provocative. And I think that that's going to change, but because of our high land values and because of the number of lots that we've built out, that our requisition is quite high. And the types of things that we think are important, that we are more than willing to pay into, are the ones that are getting the most attention this year. But it's still an issue that needs to be resolved in terms of they want our support, then there has to be better collaboration, cooperation, work. And I think that's really been lacking. And I understand why, because there's a whole lot of elephants in the room, or whatever the metaphor is. But I think that we both can do a better job in terms of figuring out ways of discussing all of these. And I think that the onus at this point in terms of the steps that the trust has taken is primarily on the trust, and that's hard for them because they're very overextended. Nevertheless, I think that we have to figure that out. In terms of this recommendation in particular, they've talked about engagement process between May and October, and I would say that for this community, anything that happens during the summer break is problematic in terms of that we have some summer people that are here, but we have a lot of regulars that are not here. Also, if we're going to rely on BOFest, that's a separate organization. There was at least one, possibly 2 years where they didn't allow they didn't have space for, they didn't want to organize community groups having tasers. So I'm not sure that that's the most effective idea. I would like very much for us to have a committee of the whole meeting on that policy statement and on possibly with the trust. Executive committee at the very least, in terms of our relationship with the trust and the letter and the protocol agreement and this policy, because there's a lot of moving pieces, it is complex, and I think that it's a bit of a schmozzle, and that would be really good to get some, and that's not a legal term, but good to get some clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Councillor Saunders.
Thank you. I'm going to say that I support the mayor's position here. This was, I know you didn't use it. I know Councillor Getty didn't use the legal term, but schmozzle seemed to be fairly accurate to me. And I think that, while I appreciate the position of both Councillor Getty and Councillor Fast of being kind of torn between, two sides here, I understand that, but I think my job and our job as a council is to represent the best interests of Bowen, understanding that we're part of the, a part of the trust. And so we do have to take that into account. But I think representing the best interests of Bowen Island and our community is to get this straightened out and less of a schmozzle and fewer elephants in the room and not spend money doing it. It's not a ton of money, but we don't have a ton of money to spend in any event. So I would rather see this reorganized and thought through and not have an expectation that sometime in the summer, as was pointed out, when we're not going to be able to raise a whole lot of people anyway, that we try and have engagement at that point. So yeah, I don't really support things as they stand right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Getty.
This is not a financial impact for Bowen and our tax base.
Okay.
Indirectly, in terms of it comes out of the trust budget,
Right.
but it's not out of the Bowen budget.
But to taxpayers, generally. So I'll move a motion, and I provide it to the corporate officer. And it reads, whereas Trust Council's letter dated October 16th, 2024, advised the province of the conclusion that, quote, without systemic change, the island's trust cannot meet the challenges of its time. And whereas Trust Council has requested the province review the governance model of the trust, the object and mandate of the trust, decision-making structures with respect to DRIPA, the geographic scope and marine authority of the trust, and the funding of the trust. And whereas the Islands Trust Council has formulated no public strategic plan for the 2022 to 2026 term. And whereas the Islands Trust is not meaningfully engaged with Bowen Island Municipality in the spirit of its protocol agreement on the Islands Trust policy statement or its request for comprehensive governance review to the province, be it resolved that Bowen Island Municipality does not support any direction of resources to engagement on the Islands Trust policy statement until these issues are resolved. And that a letter be sent to the Islands Trust Council notifying them of this resolution.
I'd second that.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. And we'll get that up on screen, as I know that it is lengthy. Yes, Councillor Morse.
Is there something in there about meeting with us? Reading the protocol agreement?
I did mention in the spirit of the protocol agreement, there is, there's been discussion about the trust meeting with us, and I know that previously they would meet with us every year, and we've seen that so far as this council for several years.
It died with COVID. It hasn't been re-resurrected. I'm not sure if we did actually meet before COVID. I guess, yeah. Can you put it up on the
Yeah, I
screen?
apologize.
Well, oh, there it is. Okay. I think John Saunders seconded it. And can we go past the whereas to the meat part at the
I
bottom?
wanted to reread the. If I put the whereases in there, then they're get picky about those two.
Councillor Getty.
Can I ask a question on the corporate?
Mhm.
you have any idea or opinion in terms of, because the trust council voted as a majority, to pass the resolution about the letter to the province, does this put us into, as trustees, into a
That question was asked a few years back with respect to a vote at the Metro Board. And the answer is quite clear. You're wearing two different hats.
I've also had a separate legal opinion in relation to Metro Vancouver and my duties to the board versus my duties to council, and it's been, the advice I got back was that there's no conflict in wearing those two hats.
Depends what table you're sitting
However,
around.
govern yourself accordingly. There's a spot at the end that said, and that a letter be sent to the Islands Trust Council notifying them of this resolution. Councilor Getty.
All right, so wearing my Bowen Island councillor hat, I am emphatically in favor of this. And I think that it's something that we really need to be strong about in terms of trying to help the trust get through some of the inner conflicts that are on the council board in terms of that, you know, the 10-14 vote is on the basis of ignoring the protocol agreements that are in place. And that was unsettling at the time, and it's very much a problem, I think, in terms of there are several, not just Bowen Island, but several nations that have established these agreements that expect to have consultation. So I think that not taking the time and pushing this through, thinking that it could and should be some sort of an election issue, and there was no plan in place for that, is wrong-headed. And that we need to spend more time, both in terms of the content and the process of all of this. I think I'm saddened by the fact that all the good hard work on the policy statement is getting set aside with this other stuff. So I think that this is a good way to help the trust focus.
Over to you, Councilor Morse.
I dug my trust binder on the other end. I have a binder this thick of studies that have been done on governance and what the mandate means and what the role of various things are. And they've all been very well explained in the past. So it's not understanding the mandate, it's and the Alan Nielsen Welsh report that I sent explains why it's 2 for each area very clearly. And then there's been other things about, you know, stick to your knitting, not border out. So I'm quite happy with this, but it says the letter be sent to the Islands Trust Council. So do we want to advise each one of the members of the Islands Trust Council separately? Because if you send it to the Islands Trust Council, it's just going to show up as correspondence on the next board.
Councilor Wake, are you able to mute yourself?
Okay.
He's on the airport. Yeah,
You able to mute him? So
I think he just got me. So I would like to change that last, that a letter be sent to Islands Trust Council and each, and that the Islands Trust Council be advised of this resolution, and each and a copy be sent to each Islands trustee.
yeah, so maybe with that comment with the copy of each trustee.
Yeah. Is it Island trustee or Islands trustee?
Islands Trust. Islands Trust.
Islands Trust trustee.
It's fun.
Amendment moved by Councilor Morse. For a second. I would second that. Any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Getty.
I think that's a repetition, so something is addressed to Islands Trust Council, but it comes to each of us.
Do you actually get it the day it's sent? So it's like our BIM-BC at Marin Council,
Right.
because that wasn't the practice when I was on Trust Council. So you didn't get to see it until it showed up on an agenda.
No.
All right, so I'll withdraw the
Oh.
amendment.
I'm fine with having that on there just because it may make it go quicker and I can't be sure that I see them all on the day that they're sent. And it doesn't do any harm. So I'm in favor.
Maybe we'll look for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to the amendment as written? Seeing none, that carries by unanimous consent. So now we're back to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? Councillor Getty.
I would, through the chair, and ask, is there a possibility that we could get some sort of a staff report in terms of understanding the protocol agreement that we've got?
Do you have the protocol agreement? I thought it was quite clear.
I know, but if there's anything.
Can we?
Yeah, we're gonna go maintain the chair and go through the chair and we'll eliminate crosstalk. Over to you, to our CEO.
If that's an information item, we could just share a copy of the protocol through the email.
So part of the protocol agreement, I'm just wondering if there's anything helpful in terms of having an opinion.
I think it may be helpful, especially given the what have I just hear some dark allusions to what's coming in the Islands Trust budget for Bowen Island and how that will play out. It might be worthwhile giving some attention to, particularly as the budget process unfolds. That could be rolled into like, what are we supposed to be getting from the trust and what do we actually get? And how does that measure up to the protocol agreement?
I take it back.
I'll look for discussion on the main motion. Councillor Fest.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, I'm very uncertain about. Doesn't support any direction of resources to engagement on the Islands Trust policy statement. Until these issues are resolved, though, is good. And they may not listen to us anyway. So I am in support of this motion. I'm in case it's helpful for this conversation, there is now a new CAO at Islands Trust, Ruben Bruni. He doesn't start till the end of November sometime. We've got a Trust Council meeting coming up December 3rd to the 5th, so this is good timing. And that'll be in Victoria. And maybe other Islands Trust, other Bowen Island councillors may wish to attend and speak. Yeah, so I'm in support of the motion. Thank you for allowing me to think out loud.
And just, for absolute clarity, I am not opposed to the Islands Trust Policy Statement. I'm not opposed to an update of the Islands Trust Policy Statement. Where I believe the issues that we have as a municipality, firstly are on the engagement piece and how the municipality's been engaged in some of these processes, given our protocol agreement. But second, I find it very difficult to digest that on one hand, you have a trust council that is saying, we can't govern ourselves. We can't meet the challenges of our day. And then there's going to be an expenditure of money on this island that is seeking out engagement from residents on a policy statement that when what it fits into is being openly put forward by the trust as something irreconcilable and irresolvable. So my hope is similar to the Trust Council's discussion on the letter itself, that this is a conversation starter and hopefully it gets some attention and we can start having a constructive and honest conversation about what it means to be a municipality within the Islands Trust governance structure. And, you know, also where we can assist and where we can help and provide some leadership and advance the interests of the governance and the object and mandate of the trust moving forward. So it's not a anti-policy statement. It's not an antitrust sentiment. It's there's process issues here that are moving forward to spend a bunch of money that at this point seems a little redundant given the larger issues that the Trust Council is debating. And seeing no further debate, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I in favor.
And that carries unanimously. We'll receive 8.1A by unanimous consent unless there's any objection. That was the letter from the trust. Moving on to 8.2, a report to council on water system community information. We have Mr. Watson, our CFO, joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take the opportunity to provide a little update to council. This was our first community meeting that was held under the new structure where the LACs have been dissolved and we've moved to a more community information meeting structure with all of the different water districts. So we did convene 4 meetings. We combined Cope Bay and Eagle Cliff, given that there's such a congruence of interests on that one. And of course, the 3 West Side districts were also combined into a single meeting. I will report that we got better attendance at all of these meetings than we typically do at any local advisory committee. I thought that was positive. There's still a long way to go. You can see the numbers there are still relatively low. So we will continue to engage and advertise and invite and welcome people to come. We did do a little bit of a community engagement poll at the end of it and encourage everybody who attended to give us some feedback on that poll. So some of that feedback was helpful and interesting. We went over the things in bylaw 259, which we have committed to establishing their financial information, the annual water quality report, talk about any emergent issues within the operation side of each of the water systems, and of course, the status of any capital projects that are going on in each one. So I think from a staff perspective, we felt that the information provided was informative and useful for people. We've also established a new email that anybody can access in order to ask questions or get further information, and that's water@bimbc.ca. Included on that are myself, the utility managers, Patrick, the director of engineering, and Annette, the utilities coordinator as well. So that gives people direct access to frontline staff to ask questions or get further information. We felt, as staff, we felt very positive about it, and we are looking forward to continuing those. The next opportunity for engagement is going to be early in the new year when we put together the committee of the whole meeting to deal with the budgetary issues.
Thank you. Councilor Morse.
I didn't check, Jerry, because I didn't figure out how to do it right away. Do we have any idea how many people watched on YouTube?
It changes all the time because any additional clicks start to add up. These numbers are who was attending in the room.
In the Zoom room,
at the
but who
time.
was actually watching on
At the
YouTube?
time.
Yeah.
I don't know that we I don't know that we tracked it, but I can find out if we can track it.
I think we can track it, so
Yeah.
so I think it might be useful, because I know with council meetings, a lot of people watch rather than come and sit here or
Right.
go on Zoom, watch on the YouTube channel. Or how many went and looked afterwards.
Afterwards, yeah.
Yeah. And one very interesting comment I noticed in the good point, because Kristen has tried to do variable rate billing up there, and it's always been a pushback. This comment, just wondering why water is billed primarily as a fixed cost when there's a great variation in water use.
Mhm.
So I put a little check mark beside that one.
Yeah,
I think
I
we should
was intrigued by that too.
try the variable rate process next year.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Further questions, discussion? Councillor Fast.
Thanks for the report. It sure looks like it was a lot less time consuming than holding all those separate meetings as well. And I'm glad you got better participation. Thank you.
Councillor Getty.
I heard from 3 different households in Clearwater that it went well.
Okay.
Contrary to their expectations.
Oh, that's good.
That's the other interesting thing. Most of the attendees were not former members of the LAC. It was general public.
Okay, I'll look for someone to move the recommendation, please. Councillor Getty.
But council received the water system community information meeting feedback report for information.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Morse. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. And next, 8.3 quarterly budget update, back to our CFO.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the rest of council, I've prepared the Q3 budget update for your information. I'll just quickly touch on some of the highlights. The revenue projections at this point in the year are coming in very close to budget. Some of the variances that I could speak to within the other fees and charges line, we're going to end up being over budget. We're going to collect more revenue than we had anticipated. That's good news. That's mostly coming about $70,000 additional building permit revenue than we had budgeted for. We did take a very conservative approach to budget our building permit revenue this year. We do anticipate that we'll be likely in the neighborhood of about $70,000 over by the time we get to December 31st. Some of this overage is offset. We did plan for the community center, of course, to be open earlier than it is. So we had budgeted some rental revenue in there. So that, of course, I've taken out of my forecast. So the offset there, we will be about $26,000 over. There's a provincial grant line item with a big variance, $1.2 million under, and that's related to the Eagle Cliff project. So the grant money from the Eagle Cliff project. We had, when we did our budget planning initially, we thought that would have started by this time this year. We don't expect to see any of those project expenditures taking place until early in the new year, because of course it is too contingent on the resolution of the water treatment plant issue. So we've not spent any of those funds and we won't be looking to spend any of those until that is sorted. Other contributions, there's $150,000 grant that we had planned for within the emergency planning program. It's a disaster mitigation project grant. None of that revenue has been or will be received, but again, it's a net neutral cost to the municipality because the expenses aren't gonna then come from that either. Investment revenue is going to be higher than budgeted, so we will be on the winning side of that too. Looking at some of the operating expenses, they're all coming in. I believe that we'll end the year very close to what we budgeted in most of our expense categories. The general government one is showing that we will have a significant overage of about $91,000. And most of that, of course, relates to the occupancy costs to maintain this space here. There's a plus, though. On the other side of that, we haven't incurred the operating costs that we otherwise would have had we been occupying the facility. So you'll see that under facility management, we're looking at cost savings of about $137,000. So that relates to the just the general ongoing maintenance and operating costs to maintain that space over there, as well as the staffing that we had anticipated that we would have had on board by now, which we don't, the custodial staffing. So that 91,000 is offset by savings of 137,000 on the facility management side. You do see some significant savings in fire and emergency. Again, that relates to that $150,000 grant in emergency planning that I spoke of on the revenue side. Bylaw services is under. We did have we had a plan to hire auxiliary ferry marshalling staff this year, and despite significant efforts to try to attract people to those positions, we were unable to fill any of them this year. We also did have some vacancies in the bylaw officer 2 position throughout the year, where we are, it is vacant now. We are in the at the point of making an offer to a candidate to fill that position, but it will be the 3rd time that position's been filled this year. So there's been a lot of turnover in bylaw services this year. Again, those interim vacancies are what accounts for the budget savings there. What else? Strategic planning. Those were sort of council directed initiatives, or there's sort of one-off things sometimes that we don't really know where else they live, and we kind of stick them in there. But the big thing that is the savings in the strategic planning department. Number 1 was the cost for OCP. We had anticipated that we would spend upwards of $100,000 to get that consultant and the work to proceed. Much of that is, I think we're really ambitious as to how much work we would get approved. So it's still going to take place. It's just going to be shifted till next year. And the other piece of that is the MRDT, the Municipal Regional District Tax. We had $50,000 set aside to undertake that work this year. And same thing, it's still looking at taking place, but it's probably going to be shifting into 2025. So most of the savings there are really things that are just timing differences, and we'll get to it next year. Looking at the capital expenditures. We have the active transportation, so that was work on the multi-use path that we had hoped for to take place in this year. We just recently closed an RFP, or request for proposal, for that work. I know that staff, that a report will be coming forward to a council meeting very soon in order to recommend awarding a contract. So we're just behind in a year. There was there was additional design that needed to be done in order to accommodate the difficult corner piece there. So that process took a little bit longer than I think what anybody had anticipated. So again, it's just the work is, should council award that contract, the work will go forward. We're just delaying it a little bit. The Carter Road Bridge, we are completed it on time, on budget. It was a very well-managed project, and it came in very close to budget. Community Center, we're down to our last couple $1 million of expenditures for that project, and we do expect that we'll be moving in there by the end of the year. Let's see, the culverts, that project, which is $1.6 million, that relates to the Blue Water Park work. So they are focusing on doing the well upgrade work first, and then they will progress to the water line upgrades and replacements. So that work will take place coincidentally with the water main upgrade. So that work, again, scheduled to take place. It's just a little bit later than we had anticipated. What else? There's some significant things. Fire department, we did, they had $250,000 of self-contained breathing apparatus equipment that they were going to acquire this year. I can confirm that it's been purchased, it's been acquired. We're actually just waiting for the bill. So whenever that bill comes, we've got the money there to pay it. And yeah, I'm happy to take questions on the progress of any of the additional capital line items. There aren't anything that's a really big line item that I want to point out, anything significant to you. I did take the time to include a mid-year update of where we're at with all of our water utilities. So we have not got any expenditures in the water utilities that I believe that should be brought to your attention. They all seem to align with budget. We have recently, in September, we concluded our collective agreement negotiations with our staff. All of the utility staff are members of the bargaining unit. So we had been anticipating some additional labor expenses with regards to retro payments, that kind of thing. So they've all been paid, they've all been posted. So we are, I believe that we're on budget, and nothing extraordinary to report to you from the side of the utilities as well. I do believe that in the operating fund, that we will end the year with a bit of a surplus position. At this point, my projection's showing just under 300,000. That's about 3.2% of the operating budget. That money would go and it would be added to our accumulated operating surplus balance, which is great. That's our kind of wiggle room money that gets us through the year on our operating expenses from January 1st to June. We don't collect the taxes till July. So that's the money that we use to kind of pay the bills in the first half of the year. Ideally, having an accumulated operating surplus at about 50% of your operating budget would be ideal. So we'll it's sitting at about 1.5 million now. If we say that we're going to add 250 or 300,000 to it, that would put us in a place where we expect to have about 1.8 million at the end of the year. And that's our operating budget is 7 million. So it's getting closer to that target optimal balance. Yeah. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. And I see Councillor Saunders with his hand up.
Thank you to the mayor, to Ms. Watson. You may have touched on this, but it went right by me if you did. Right at the top, the revenue projections. There's a line item near the bottom, other revenue 1.1 million, collected 245,000, and there's another 1.1 to come. What was that? I didn't hear what it was. Like there's another $1 million coming in.
That is the donation that's currently held at the Bowen Island Community Foundation to complete the community center project. So it's still, yeah, we've made the request and requested the funds be transferred. So we're just waiting on that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought it was, but I want to be sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll look for someone to move the recommendation received, please. Councillor Getty.
I'll move the resolution that's printed in our agenda.
That council received the quarterly budget update as of September 30th, 2024 for information, moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, 11.1 update to Council on Metro Vancouver business. Everything related to Metro Vancouver circles around the development of budget. So the special board of directors meeting held October 16th was on the presentation of its 5-year financial plan. The top line item is that the Metro Vancouver's operating budget is $1.46 billion with a capital cash flow of 1.77 billion, with an estimated average household impact of 875. So, roughly in line with Bowen Island's operating budget and operating cash flow, which puts us in good stead. There was a council of councils that was held on Saturday that myself and Councillor Fast were at, which was really around breaking down some of the numbers with respect to the departments within Metro Vancouver, and councils from across the Metro Vancouver region had the opportunity to ask questions of staff as well as the committee chairs at that meeting. And there was also a mayor's committee meeting that was held October 17th, which was really to receive about 15 delegations from the development community around the proposed implementation of, well, it's not proposed because it's been approved by the board and it is moving forward, but Metro Vancouver's change in DCCs, which moves it very directly to a growth pays for growth model, which is will have a significant impact on developers in the region. However, no action was taken at that meeting to change the 5-year plan.
Are those DCCs levied on Bowen, or are they from work, or like the
only DCCs that's levied on Bowen is for parks, which is a new DCC, but Bowen Island is not. We're not part of the water district or the sewage and drainage, so we don't participate in those. That's a great question. TransLink, there was one closed committee, closed mayor's council meeting. The general gist of what's going on at TransLink right now is mayors are really waiting to see how the provincial election shakes out and developing a strategy for closing the operating funding gap. That's it for Metro Vancouver and TransLink. If there's no questions, I'll pass it over to our Islands trustees.
Sure, I'll start if you don't.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, just, we've got a number of items that are in the, info items. The 12.1 is the Islands Trust Conservancy Report. And, there, I'd just like to put out that the Conservancy is another one of these arms, that the Bowen Island, residents contribute to and we're part of. So that, Conservancy, we have, three, nature reserves on Bowen. The Islands Trust Conservancy Board is different in that it's got three provincially appointed trustees and three elected trustees on it. So it's a different model that we might want to look at some point. The minister has also recognized and required the Islands Trust Conservancy to do even more First Nations engagement than it had been doing. So it's a separate board from Trust Council, and it's getting a separate treatment and level of encouragement, I guess would be the good way to say it, from the minister. Like, no, we're not going to approve your 5-year plan. Go do more work on your declaration and your reconciliation action plan, and which is already ambitious. So it's something we might also want to look at. Trust Programs Committee meets November 4th, and Trust Council is December 3rd to 5th, as I said. The new CAO, Ruben Bronny, comes from, he was an Assistant Deputy Minister with the Basic Public Service Agency. And that's enough for me for now. Thank you, considering we've already talked about it. Over to Trustee Getty.
All right, so I've taken up a new position for me on the Financial Planning Committee. And there were several comments made with respect to the projected increase in taxes for Bowen. And in support of the committee, taking a very hard look in terms of ways of bringing them down. So I'm going to be working with the acting CAO is also the financial officer, and that's creating all sorts of workload problems for her. So we're all looking very much forward to the new CAO coming in. He's I think I said earlier what the process was in terms of, it's been a very long 6 to 8 months that we hired a professional recruiter to help us with the process, but we started off with something, I don't remember the exact numbers, but something like 120 applicants from across Canada and some incredibly high level people. We narrowed that down to, I think the first long list was 9 people, and then we interviewed on Zoom, and they did a presentation, 5 or 6 people, and then we ended up with one-on-one interviews with our 2 favorite, I suppose, when during UBCM, we had extra meetings and interviewed them. And it was the 2 people that we had to choose from were both incredibly fabulous. So we've ended up agreeing on one, and the offer's gone out. It's been accepted. It's been accepted by provincial authorities in terms of and now we're working on, we continue to meet with the hiring committee to work out the job description. I'm in the process of, tomorrow's my drop dead deadline for getting the agenda together for the governance committee. And that's always fun. Quotation marks. And yeah, there's been apparently, I haven't actually seen, there's been some pushback in terms of the code of conduct, and so we're going to be possibly picking that up again. And there's that November 1st deadline for making comments to the province about whether or not the codes of conduct should be mandatory, and if so, what should be included in the content of them. So if anybody is interested in that, there's more material available on that. So busy, interesting, challenging, continuing.
I mean, dare I ask, is it public what the starting number for the Bowen Island increase.
The agenda is that I'm just looking at.
The number that shows up on the report to the finance committee was something like about a 34% increase. That translates into something like $81. So.
For the average household?
Yeah. So it's, that was on top of last year's, we got it down to, I think, a 14% increase. So,
Okay.
and I believe it has to do with the policy statement and some other things that that Bowen is paying for not planning. There's not as many expenses in the planning, so the comparison between the rest of the trust and Bowen is skewed.
$530,000.
That's the total.
Okay.
Up from 400 and something, 480.
And traditionally, we've seen that number come down significantly as the budget process unfolds.
Yeah. So everybody looked at the 34th percent and went, and now we're working on that.
Okay. Any other questions for our Islands trustees? Not seeing any, we will move on to question periods. So question period is an opportunity for members of the public to request clarification or ask a follow-up question relating to an item discussed at the meeting. I look to throngs of people online or in our press gallery if there's questions that they might have. Yes, come on up, Mr. Curio.
Hi, it's Alex Creel from Gender. So a few weeks ago here at council, it was mentioned that the municipality had this building until the end of October. And so I'm wondering, come Friday, will you be working here or the community center or perhaps another place, the snug?
That's a great question. I'll refer over to staff.
Through the mayor, we have an option to extend it to. Still working towards the date, but have a contingency in place in case we don't. I believe there's going to be a few days we'll have to move audio visual equipment. So within our procedures bylaw, we can do a Zoom meeting if we need to accommodate that.
Okay, but it sounds like everyone will be working out of here until the final move to the new building.
Yeah, that's a plan.
Okay, and then I just wanted to know if there was an update on the Cove Bay water treatment plant and how the work is going.
Okay. Yeah, thanks again to the mayor. So we are working with Purifics, who's a supplier of the equipment, to go through a step-by-step troubleshooting process. So we're engaging with them weekly. And working through several issues with them. I can't give you a set timeline for when we'll work through all those issues, but the discussions have been productive lately.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dillon and everyone.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.